What would you get if you combined one of the best art galleries in the United States, a Circus Museum, and a Venetian mansion overlooking Sarasota Bay? One of the most striking places in this part of the world. Welcome to another leg of our itinerary through the southern United States. In this video, we continue our journey across the Florida Peninsula, and we are going to stop at a very special place in Sarasota. The Ringling Museum. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus was the largest in the world and boasts a 146-year history. But in the museum, not only can we learn about acrobats and clowns, but we can also see thousands of objects of art that John Ringling, one of the founders of the circus, and his wife Mabel brought to Florida. The complex is 14,000 square feet, and it would take you more than a day to see it properly. So today, we're going to show you the most interesting parts of it. Today is a great day because we're going to visit not only one of the most famous mansions in Florida, but also one of the most significant art collections in the United States, and moreover, we're going to learn about a beautiful love story. Upon entering the property through an unusual archway that welcomes visitors, we bought a $25 general admission ticket that gives you access to the Circus Museum, the gardens, the art gallery, and the first floor of the mansion. The first thing we wanted to know was where all this wealth came from. The Ringling brothers, Albert, Augustus, Otto, John, and Charles, were originally from Iowa. In 1870, still children, they began organizing amateur shows. Then, they gradually began to improve, learn new tricks, hire other artists, and eventually achieved unprecedented success. By 1889, they were touring with their circus on trains all over the state, and in 1919, they merged with the Barnum and Bailey Circus, creating a circus empire that lasted until 2017. The first building we visited here was Tibble's Learning Center and Circus Museum, where you can learn about the history of the Ringling family as well as the wider history of circuses in the US. The Circus Museum is filled with 19th and 20th century artifacts such as clothing, sets, tents, animal cages, cannons, and even parade wagons. And this marvel that we see here is the personal train wagon of John Ringling and his wife Mabel Ringling. John used it between 1905 and 1916 to travel to the places where his circus troops toured, and to make sure everything was in order, as well as using it to travel with his wife around the country. Unfortunately, we can't climb in, but I can show you a little bit of the inside. Back then, having your own train wagon was a real status symbol. Besides their intended purpose, they were also used for hosting meetings with friends, for taking family from one place to another, and all in all, for having a private space for traveling around the country. Check out this huge mural. I've always been a little afraid of circuses. Even if you don't like circuses or have coulrophobia, this museum is still worth visiting because it shows the incredible effort it took to organize such shows at the time. And it also demonstrates what it was like when circus came to town. Back in an age without television or movies, with all that magic of the arrival of caravans, tents, and exotic animals. In addition to immersing you in the circus world, the museum gives you a tour through the history of entertainment marketing. You can find many interesting vintage posters here, which were simply indispensable back then because these posters determined the success that a circus would have in a particular city, and the Ringling brothers stood out because they always had a very effective poster. There are also posters here for another circus, which they eventually bought out, creating a monopoly. But the point is that circus posters were one of the main ways to get the attention of the entire population in what was a highly competitive environment, so they had to be very catchy. And you also had to make sure that other circuses didn't take them down and put up their own posters in that place. In addition to the circus, the Ringling Brothers were all involved in businesses such as theater, real estate, and banking, but John Ringling stood out among them and was one of the wealthiest men of his time. He and his wife Mabel shared a passion for art and travel. By 1927, Sarasota had become Ringling's winter circus headquarters, and many artists began moving to the area and to rehearse there. So when this museum opened in late 1940s, it had hundreds of exhibits in its collection. The main attraction here is the giant model of the Ringling Circus, which consists of 44,000 parts. In this part of the museum, you'll find some spectacular models of the circus railway transportation. This was what the Ringling Brothers Circus was famous for, and it was thanks to John Ringling's persistence. He was the one who convinced the others to transport the circus by train, and it really was a grand idea as it allowed them to reach the whole country. And the logistics involved were amazing. The American government even asked the circus to teach them the secrets of their logistics, which they then planned to use for the needs of the American army. Usually, Ringling Circus would arrive in a new town at 6 a.m. At 9 a.m., the show would start with tens of thousands of spectators attending it. And then at 9 p.m., they would pack everything up and be on their way again. Thanks to these details, you can get a good idea of how grand it was at the beginning of the 20th century. 6 arenas, 1,500 employees, annex shows, mini zoos, canteens, dressing rooms. This model is the work of Howard Tibbles, who fell in love with the circus as a child and spent his entire life building this model. It may seem like a rather strange hobby, but the result is astounding. What a spectacular view we have here. It's Sarasota Bay, and I think it's part of Tampa Bay. This mansion was built in the Venetian or American Venetian style, and it was supposed to look like one of the palaces in Venice, with the bay behind it just like a canal. It's a huge red sandstone building with colorful windows and wrought iron balconies, which strikes you the moment you see it from a distance.
This is Venetian Gothic. Full basement, underneath, 36,000 square feet. You see the terracotta, all the designs, all the glazed terracotta, inside and out, all the hand-painted ceilings, which you'll see. We can thank Mabel. Mabel went to the kilns up in Pennsylvania. She inspected, she worked with architects. There's a whole ceiling in the court of Pecky cypress, which is a native of Florida, no longer available. But as you go through, be sure to look at the beautiful hand-painted ceiling.
There are many versions of the story about how Mabel and John's relationship began. It is said that they met in Chicago and fell in love at first sight. Mabel was from a humble background, but she had a great passion for art and collecting, which she shared with John. The couple was known for their great affection for each other. They married in 1905 and 6 years later bought this piece of land, in addition to a quarter of Sarasota. 10 years later, they began building this bayfront mansion, which they called Cadizan, meaning John's house in the Venetian dialect. The mansion is the result of their shared passion for travel. In order to get their architect inspired to draw the plans for the mansion, Mabel brought back from Venice a collection of photographs and sketches of various buildings, such as the Doge's Palace. The main entrance leads to the lower part of the house, where you can see the large ballroom, living room, dining room, and kitchen, and what they looked like when the Ringlings lived here. One of the most beautiful details are the stained glass windows in shades of red, yellow, green, and blue. The views of the bay are especially beautiful from the windows. The couple was very passionate about art as well as historical objects. They preserved many items from ruined mansions and castles. The spouses acquired them during their travels and incorporated them into their home. As a matter of fact, the tiles were brought back by John by ship from Barcelona, where thousands of houses had been demolished to carry out the famous expansion of the city. There is a separate tour to visit Ringling's private chambers on the second floor, which costs an additional $10 and includes a very detailed account of Ringling's life. We booked one of the 3 daily tours and did not regret it. Even though the couple never had children, they never lacked for company in the house, as they always had many pets, and they also hosted many events and parties here. In between visiting the house and the art museum, we took the opportunity to walk through the arboretum and garden and relax a little. Now, these roses may not look like anything special, and I don't know how they feel in this Florida climate, but they are considered to be the oldest roses in the state because Mabel herself planted them, which means that some of them are over 100 years old. It was Mabel's favorite spot, and it's perfect for winding down. The shade of the Bengal fig tree, the statues, and the rose bushes all make it a worthwhile taking a walk here. As I've already mentioned, one of the main attractions of this place is the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art. During their travels in Europe, they were so impressed by the art, especially the Uffizi Gallery, that they decided to create something similar at home. During his travels along with his circus, John began buying art and eventually created this giant museum. The John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art consists of 21 rooms and has over 28,000 works of art. It's quite an impressive sight. It features paintings by Rubens and other famous artists. While traveling around Europe, John became so interested in art that he started buying paintings in all the places he visited with his circus, and he ended up with an impressive collection. His wife also had a passion for art. She was known for spending a lot of money at auctions and bidding well above actual value. As you can see, they have definitely put together a very impressive collection here, and it is one of the most significant art collections in the entire United States. The number of objects John and Mabel Ringling purchased because of their love of art leaves you speechless. The U-shaped grounds have a stunning central courtyard full of statues, replicas of Michelangelo's David, and famous Italian fountains. It's a nice place to come from time to time and to give your eyes a break after so much beauty inside. The Grand Museum was supposed to be one of John Ringling's final legacies, but he never got to enjoy it during his lifetime because it opened in the mid-1930s, which were his last years of his life, and Mabel never got to see it. It started off exclusively with paintings and decorative arts from European Middle Ages to the 19th century, but later was filled with more modern European and American art, and today it also has an impressive collection of Oriental art. It's a very dynamic museum with several collections that are constantly changing, and the museum's collection is truly impressive. Unfortunately, the Ringlings never got to enjoy their art gallery because Mabel died in 1929, 4 years after construction of the museum had begun, dealing a heavy blow to her husband. John himself died in 1936. The Great Depression and some imprudent investments nearly bankrupted him. So he bequeathed the gallery and his home to the people of Florida to keep them out of the hands of debtors. The complex opened its doors in 1946 and, along with the rest of the buildings, became a major landmark in Sarasota. The place is truly worth a visit, and we're sure we'll come back here again. In the meantime, We're off on a trip to other latitudes where a snowy alpine winter awaits us, and we're really hoping you'll join us. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, and if you don't want to miss our new travels, subscribe to our channel and click on the bell. Thank you, world travelers, and see you soon!